Welcome, viewers, to another amazing podcast this afternoon. I'm going to be talking to Dr. Lizzy Bernthal, and she has got so much to talk to us because I feel that the world has gone through a crisis. We have gone through trauma, and so we're going to be looking at how are some of the best ways for us to overcome the trauma that we have experienced in our life, especially in COVID-19 and this pandemic. And I think the best specialist to be talking to about this will be Dr. Lizzy. For the sake of today, Dr. Lizzy is happy for us to call her Lizzy. And who is Dr. Lizzy? I'm just going to give you a few points that I know about Dr. Lizzy. Then we are going to give her 60 minutes to introduce herself. So she is a resilience leadership coach. She is an international speaker. She's an author. She's a senior leader, and she helps leaders to rediscover their voice, confidence, and enable them to show up in a very authentic way. So she's going to be telling us how we can do all of those. But if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to subscribe now. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And I want you to also share this with all your friends so they can join in this conversation with us, and you can both upload after this. Hit the notification button so that whenever we have another video uploaded, you will be the first to know. So without much ado, Dr. Lizzy, you are most welcome. How are you today?
Great, really excited to be here. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's good. So I want us to do one fun fact before we get into the serious stuff. So what is one fun fact about you?
I think I was nearly killed by a coconut. And the reason that that's a fun fact was because I was in the army for 25 years. I've done all sorts of, I haven't done extraordinary things. I've been in extraordinary places. I've dodged bullets. I've done all sorts of extraordinary experiences, coups, avalanches, heaven knows what. And I think the funniest thing was I went on a holiday after all this stuff was going on, went to Thailand, and I nearly got killed by a coconut that landed literally about a foot, literally a kind of a few inches away from my head.
Gosh. So all the things that could have happened to you never happened, and then a coconut. Oh my God, I love coconuts as well. Oh dear. But at least we're glad that you are here. Thank you very much. So if I gave you 60 minutes, 60 seconds for you to quickly tell somebody in 60 seconds who you are, who you represent, what you represent, and what would you say about yourself?
Right, so start off at 10. So what I do is after 25 years in the army as a nurse and a midwife, I am absolutely passionate to help leaders be the best they can be. So having had an experience of bullying and all sorts of exposed to a toxic environment, I am absolutely passionate to help leaders stand tall, own who they are, be the best version of themselves, because when you are the best version of yourselves, then you don't care about what other people think, because you know you are awesome as you are, but without arrogance, without fear, just owning who you are. So that's my mission, and I do that through coaching, through workshops, through just having conversations and with individuals and with businesses to help them be values driven and really have their mission, have their purpose. So it's all aligned with the business and the individual.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot packed into the 60 seconds. So, we've been using this word a lot, be the best version of yourself. What does it mean in simple man's terms to be the best version of myself?
Well, if you imagine, what I do is I just, if you get to stand still or stand really quietly for a moment. And what I get clients to do is just literally sit there with their eyes shut for a second or for a minute with their hands on their chest and just imagine what they would be like if there was no limitation, no restriction, nothing from geography, people you were with, finances, anything. And imagine what you'd be doing and what your life would be like if you didn't have those restrictions. And often that is the best version of yourself.
And you were saying it's achievable.
100% achievable.
Because then what you then start to do is start to help people then to remove those barriers, those limitations, so that you can get to that ideal person that you have just pictured in your mind, isn't it?
Yeah, but you are that person already. That's the thing about being authentic. We hear so much about being authentic, being the best version of yourself, all that stuff. All we're doing is in finding the person that we are already.
Okay.
So it's
I think I like that. I haven't heard it much that way. So what you were saying is you are already that person, but you don't really know you are that person, or you don't really know that you have that person buried in the inside of you under all the stuff. And so basically what you're trying to do is help us remove this stuff to become that, so that that person can be seen. Wow, that's a good one. So what are some of the things that people allow to bury that good version, that best version of themselves? What are some of the stuff that we have piled on top of ourselves that stops us from shining that particular person that we are meant to be?
Yeah. So often there's an event in childhood that has somehow triggered something within us that we're not good enough. Now, with our childhood eyes, well, often it's between the ages of 6 and 10, but sometimes it might be younger, where someone, a parent or a child, parent or a teacher or someone significant in our life has told us something. And we, for some reason, believe that to be true, and therefore it can't be them, it must be me. And once we start believing it must be me, there must be something wrong with me, otherwise this X, Y, Z wouldn't happen. It could be something as simple as you're in class, age 7, you've put your hand up at school and your teacher said, no, that's wrong. And then you think, right, I'm never going to put my hand up again. And then that not putting your hand up goes through your life as just, oh, I'm not going to take a risk. I'm not going to risk anything because it might fail. So it's those sort of things that in our life, and once we start unpicking them and acknowledging that that is purely our little girl or a little boy that's speaking for us, and it's almost like we're a puppet with the strings of that little child inside us that's managing our life. And then once we start unpicking a bit through conversations, we can cut those strings, and that's when the true, authentic individual that we are. And the other way I describe it as, if you think of Russian dolls that have, lots of different Russian dolls, we put this body armor on to protect ourselves because we don't want to let it in because it's too painful. So if you think the majority of us are that outer big Russian doll, and again, by having these conversations, our true best version of ourselves is that little doll in the middle.
Wow. And so you help to take off all these various, the bigger dolls and keep removing them until we get to the very core of ourselves.
I mean, sometimes it takes 1 or 2 conversations, sometimes it takes a bit longer, depending on how much, how many layers we put on top of ourselves. But I think this is what I'm absolutely passionate about, is that we are all perfect. We are all awesome. We all have confidence. A baby's born with confidence. You never see a baby lying in a pram with chubby legs, hair sticking out, poo in their nappy. They never say, don't look at me, I've got poo in my nappy, I've got chubby legs. They cry and they expect everybody to stop and come to them. They don't expect to be told, well, you need to lose weight, you need to brush your hair, you need to do this, you need to do that. They just cry and then it happens. Unfortunately, all of us, we experience something that happens that just changes all that. And so confidence is another thing. We all are confident, but again, because of stuff that's happened in our life, that knocks our confidence. And again, it's just exposing what's already there. Nothing needs to be fixed. There's nothing broken. It's just finding it.
Also, you said something about the formative years of our lives, and you, as children, sometimes these things can go as far back as between the ages of 6 and 10, and something that happened, something that some traumatic experience then may have triggered this. We've got leaders who will be listening to us. What advice have you got for us, and why those specific ages are so critical?
I mean, it's not absolutely 100%. Sort of, it could be 5, it could be 11, but it is that kind of formative age group that it's because at that age we are like sponges. We absorb everything. We haven't got the cognitive understanding to question. As a 6-year-old, if somebody tells you what's right and what's wrong, you just accept they're adults. They must know. They've got all this knowledge, And so it's at that young age where we can accept stuff to be true when in fact it's not true, or it's not how it should be, or whatever. And so we've all got that. And I think it's just having those conversations. And, another thing I'm so passionate about is helping every single person acknowledge they are awesome. And I think this is where sometimes therapy can be challenging. Therapy is amazing in its own way. Yeah. However, the problem is if therapy doesn't work, often there's this philosophy that therapy, there's something that needs to be fixed. Mm. And if therapy doesn't work, that reinforces our belief that we're unfixable. Yeah. And this is where having a different philosophy, we're all whole and complete and amazing, just need those conversations, then we just need to have a bit for digging. And just it's like I always talk about it like weeding your garden or weeding your pot plants. You've got the most beautiful geraniums, but there are some weeds in there. Yeah. So let's just
helping you to take out the weeds.
Yeah, just pluck out those weeds.
Yeah. And not because you've got a problem that needs fixing. That's a beautiful way of putting it. I know that, you've already said this yourself, that you started off as a midwife, as a nurse, but now we've got you as this amazing woman, amazing coach that is empowering other people, helping other people to figure out the better version of themselves, or how to identify that version of themselves, or bring out that version of themselves that they already had. I'm sure about 25, 30 years ago, you didn't start off that way. What happened now? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, I think it's been amazing, actually. It's been an incredible journey. I'm so blessed. So, I think as a child, my mother was quite sick as a child. And I ended up as a small child looking after my mother in a way. Yeah. So I think I was sort of brought up to be kind of being that adult almost as a small child, having to care for my mother. Yeah. And so I kind of suppose it was natural that I just had this inbuilt need to care for people. So it was quite natural, I guess, for me to be a nurse. Interesting thing I was told at school, forget about university, you're not intelligent enough to go to university. So just be a nurse, don't worry about being a doctor, just be a nurse. But actually I love nursing and I'm still very passionate about it. And then when I did my nursing training, I just loved the maternity. So then I naturally became a midwife, and I love the empowerment a midwife does, supporting a woman in labour. What a greatest gift to be there when a new life arrives. So, and then after that, then I traveled around the world, then I joined the army, and I worked in the Middle East and the Far East, and that was incredible, supporting women who were in very vulnerable positions, looking after them. And then I joined the army, and then having spent some time on deployment various places, I then moved up, and much to my shock, I was asked if I wanted to do my degree, and I did that, and that went really well. And then I was asked if I wanted to do my master's, and then I found myself doing a PhD, which was extraordinary. Yeah. And at the
someone who had been told that you couldn't do it.
Very satisfying going back to my school the one time I did as a doctor, and said, oh, by the way, anyway, that's another story. But I think at the time, there were no nurses doing PhDs, and I thought, this is wrong, this is absolutely wrong, and I should be the first one to do it. So I did that. But I think looking back on my career, and then when my last job in the army, I was global health of nursing with the International Committee in Military Medicine, and I was going around supporting nurses with their empowerment, particularly in Muslim countries, where you had the gender issues, you had the women issues, you had the nursing issues, and then in the military you had the rank issues. Yeah. And so my military career was coming to an end, and I realised as I was mentoring students and mentoring and teaching as a university lecturer, I realised much of my conversations were sort of coaching, but I didn't really know what coaching was at that time. Yeah. And so looking back on my career, I realised that actually my career was to give people a voice. But during my career, I'd been bullied quite a lot. And as a result of that, I didn't feel I had my own voice, which was very ironic. I was very happy supporting others have theirs, but I didn't feel I had mine. And there was a defining moment where one day I stood up in a meeting and I told my boss, enough.
Wow.
Enough. Because he completely undermined me, and I just went for it and said, how dare you, never will you ever speak to me like that again.
Good.
And that was a completely defining moment. Wow. And it was so liberating and so empowering. I thought, right, that's it. Never will anybody have to go through what I've been through. I'm on a mission to get rid of toxic leadership, help leaders to stand tall, because in that defining moment, I suddenly stood tall.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's extraordinary. And again, I just want us, I know you've said quite a lot. I want people to go back. Don't accept what other people say about you. Don't accept the expectations of other people of you. And yes, at the time you may have accepted it and gone along with it, but then somewhere along the line, multiple times along the line, you could have just given up. I was told that I can only be good for a nurse. Let's just stay here. You went for a degree, you went for a master's, then you went for a PhD. So people, anyone that's listening, don't just remain at a level because people say that's the best that you can be. Follow your dream, follow your
100%.
passion, and continue to move on. And as I said, you haven't just stopped. Somebody could have said, I've done the PhD, that's it, my career has come to an end, that's fine, I'm just going to roll over and get on with the gardening or something. But you have decided that I'm going to put all my experiences, package all my expertise, and put it into something else. And this is one of the things that I try to get across to leaders. Your expertise, yes, was industry specific at the time, but skills are always transferable. So a lot of your expertise was around the army. Now you're not working for the army. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think, I was I got to a reasonably high rank in the army. So I was leading teams. I led a team in Afghanistan. And so I think I've always been passionate about supporting my team. And as a nurse, from even as a junior nurse, I was always mentoring the more junior nurses. So I just love teaching.
You always had the leadership that
I've always loved that. Yeah, I've always loved that. And so, I passionately believe that we can only lead others to the extent we lead ourselves. So I can't tell you how many, probably hundreds of thousands of pounds by now I've done on self-development, because I can only lead people to the extent of my own stuff I've dealt with. And I think that is the power of leadership. When, and this is where we come back to this whole authenticness. You've got to be the real deal as a leader. You cannot ever ask others to do stuff that you're not prepared to do yourself.
Or you haven't been through it yourself. And
I think from another defining moment was stepping off the tarmac to fly to Afghanistan, when I didn't know if I was going to see my daughter and my family ever again. And I did have an excuse not to go because I had a slightly injured knee, and I thought, how could I not do that? If I don't go,
expect other people to go.
Yeah, how could I do that? That's a death sentence potentially for someone. So that was another really defining moment, and that brought into my realizing, why am I doing this? And I realized it was absolutely in line with my values. And that's another thing about being authentic. It's understanding what your values are, what's important to you, and living those on a daily basis. And that's when you become authentic. That is when you become the best version of yourself, because you are being true to yourself. So all being authentic, I know it can be challenging at times, but all being authentic to me means you are being true to yourself, but that includes being vulnerable too. There are many times you don't get it right. There are many times where we muck up, but acknowledging that, and think, what can I learn from this? And that's, to me, is what being authentic is. It's not it's just being ourselves.
Can I just ask, because I just want to put across to people, and again, I know some people have lost their jobs in this pandemic, or some people have said that, I've lost my job. I've always, for the last 20, 30 years, worked in this particular industry, and I've lost my job, and I'm trying to find another job in this industry, and I'm struggling. But you and I, like you were saying, I believe that you can leverage those skills somewhere else. People, I know that in this
Yeah.
pandemic, as COVID-19 were happening, you redeployed and helped in other industries. You helped in the health and social care industry. You did a few other bits. And I'm sure as a coach, you've been able to use your expertise in different industries. Will you just give somebody just a little recap about some of the various little bits of things that you've had to do? Because I want somebody to, it's not just another conversation, but I want your mind to be so challenged, somebody's mind to be challenged and say, come on, just listening to Dr. Lizzy, this something snaps in my mind that I can do A, I can do B, I can do C. And somebody starts thinking about something else rather than just being in a box, because I've been told to keep in this box. This is the box that I know for 30 years and I'm going to stay here.
Yeah. In fact, ironically, I'm giving a workshop about this on Thursday.
Oh,
but I think it's finding our purpose and our mission and in line with our values. So it's, and what I do get clients to do is just write down, just put yourself in a quiet room somewhere, even if it's for 10 minutes with a piece of paper. I don't know why it's a pencil, but pencils seem to work better because I guess they're sort of more free writing. It probably takes us back to when we were children at school learning to write. And just write your dream life without, and I call it dare to dream. Just imagine the tooth fairy, whoever one you believe in, just came with a magic wand and gave you your magic life. Now, it might be that you want to be living in your dream house on the beach in the Caribbean and all that kind of materialistic stuff. But often when you write this, some gold comes out of actually what you really, if money was an object, what would you be doing with your life? And from that, you can have a look at it and think, oh, actually, God, what's really clear is I want to help people, or I want to do X, Y, or Z. And I think so that's sort of more on the kind of the magical bit. And the other bit is having look back on what you've done in your life so far. Mm-hmm. And you'll find a golden thread that's running through it. Like for me, it was I had no idea. I did this, and this. And it wasn't until I left the army, I reflect on, actually, it's giving people a voice. Because we develop a huge amount of skills that we don't even acknowledge we have. So, it might be you're good at organizing events. It might be that you're tidy. It might be the fact you can type fast. All sorts of silly things that you might see as silly and just incidental. Just you'll end up with a massive long list. But we don't often take that step back to actually acknowledge, because we're still on that treadmill going from day to day. We don't stop and think, actually, what have I learned? Just looking back on every job. Now, what did I learn in that job? And what did I find challenging, but what did I overcome in that job? And what sort of people do I find I get on with? And what gives me, and also the other thing is to go back to our childhood again and think, what did I love doing that I don't do anymore? It could be, I used to really love knitting or whatever it was. Well, maybe that's because I enjoyed creativity and I haven't done much creativity recently.
Yeah. And so it's just going back to all of those. Okay, that's amazing. I know that you have been deployed in different countries, different war zones, different challenging situation. I know a lot of the times people are saying that, oh, but this has happened to me. It is so painful. It is so scary. So I can't, this happened to me. That's why I've decided this is just where I'm going to remain. I don't want to step out anymore but I know you're somebody that's entered into different war zones, but yet there you are, this fantastic woman. Can you tell us a bit about, because I know I've already had Afghanistan in there. So what are some of the places that you had to go and operate? And yes, was there fear in it? Were you scared? How did you overcome some of your fears? How did you overcome some of the challenging situations that you had to encounter?
I mean, I think within the army, we're very blessed in the fact we do have a lot of training. And the other thing within the army is that you're very blessed in the fact you're surrounded by sort of like-minded people. So in that respect, you are in a bit, when you deploy, yes, it's scary. Yes, you are under fire potentially, and you are potentially might not come back. But you are in this little bubble. So you're in this complete bubble where kind of everything else outside stops in a way. So that's one thing. So it's really focusing on what you're at there. Yes, I've experienced fear, but I think courage is a really interesting concept. For me, courage is doing it anyway, no matter what. Now, that could be going up to someone in the street that you think, husband, wife, daughter is sick with COVID, for example, or they've lost their job, or that they've had some traumatic situation. Having courage just to go up to them and say, how are you? It doesn't have to be getting on a plane to Afghanistan, throwing yourself out of a helicopter, all that kind of bigger stuff.
Yeah.
It's those little acts of courage, sending an email to someone where you're just not sure, opening a difficult conversation that you're not sure where it's going to go. So having those little daily moments of courage, that's what it is. It's not necessarily the big stuff.
And I like what you said. You said courage is doing it anyway, even though you're afraid.
Yeah.
Is doing it. And I think that's something that stops us. And that's something that we all need. Fear becomes a big thing that stops us from actually moving forward in life, that stops us from trying to discover anything. Fear. So, I mean, you were talking about discovering your authentic self and that better version of yourself. It's some people are just afraid. I think fear becomes a big thing. Some are even, I remember there were times in my life when I was even afraid to dream. Or afraid to daydream, because I knew that I couldn't find that version of myself. The life that I dare dream about, I cannot achieve it. So why even put myself through it to dream it? And so it was not the fear of it not being fulfilled, but the fear of even dreaming it. And that was a big fear for me for a long time. And I say this to people. I said, sometimes also I got to a point where I couldn't even see the bigger picture. I was just concerned about getting by each day at the time and couldn't see a bigger picture, could not see a light at the end of the tunnel because of fear, until I had to come to the point where I allowed myself to begin to dream again, allowed myself to begin to daydream again, begin to formulate a picture of my ideals. And then the minute I started working on those pictures and it taking away all the fear. So what if I don't even make it? What is the worst that can happen to me for dreaming? And it was not till I was able to then have the courage to dream, to daydream, begin to work at it, begin to create those mental pictures that I could start trying to discover who I was and what I really want to be. But so it's not really an easy journey. And many a times fear clouds that journey. It stops you on that journey. So I think anybody that's listening, Dr. Lizzy is saying that courage is doing it even though I'm afraid. So have some courage and begin to take some steps out of the place that you find yourself, out of the box that we have placed ourselves within. Dr. Lizzy, would you agree with me that the world has experienced some level of trauma?
100%. And can I just say, you just demonstrated 100% just then in that, what you just said, what courage means.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the world has experienced some trauma. And it looks like nearly everybody has experienced, I think everybody has experienced a level of trauma. Whether you lost a loved one in this pandemic, whether you lost a job, whether you yourself were affected by the COVID directly or indirectly, we have all been traumatized to some level or some extent. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I think 100%. And I think it's probably the first time since the Second World War when every single person's been affected in some way. And I think this is now, as we start to emerge from it, this is where we have to be really careful. I mean, I certainly know from deployed experience supporting military personnel when they deploy, when you're in the middle of it, you're on that hamster wheel, you're surviving from day to day. And then as you emerge out, you come out of it, you think, whoa, what was all that about? So sometimes it's a question of, and there's no shame. In fact, it's a strength to ask for help. It shows courage to actually say, hang on a minute, I think I need a bit of guidance here. I'm not sure how to navigate this. And this is really important, is to all be together, collaborate, work together, because we all know we're stronger together than we are as individuals. And as I say, I passionately also believe it's courage and to be vulnerable, because that gives other people permission to say, yes, I'm finding it tough too.
Wow. what are some of the impacts? Because, okay, so I like to draw a lot on your experience, because I think your experience of war zone is just about some of the experience about what people are kind of going through now. So when you had to go off into war, or go into battle, or go into combat, or whatever it is classed as, it has some negative impacts, not just on the person going into war, but it has an impact on the people that are being left behind. And I just feel that COVID-19 as well, or this pandemic, is having some impact on the people, those of us that loved ones, and those that, even if you didn't lose. How are some of the ways that we can begin to heal, and how are some of the ways that we can begin to look after ourselves? I know you said one of the things, begin to actually acknowledge. Acknowledgement is key. Admit that I'm struggling. What else can people begin to do? What message can we give to people out there? I mean, I'm sure you're more of a specialist in this than myself, but what can we begin to tell people?
I think it's talking. It's having that conversation. It's just saying, I'm finding it tough. And then other people, then it's amazing how then others will then open up. I'm finding it tough. And certainly, actually my research was looking at the impact of the family left behind during deployment, at a time where, soldiers were being killed daily, weekly. So it was a traumatic time. And the thing about with the military environment is that we have that cohesion. And so I think the more we've seen amazing communities sort of generate during Facebook groups, of like WhatsApp groups of the street, to check that Mrs. Brown in number 92 has got some food coming in. And I think we just need to build on that. The more of a community, the more we can share, the more we can acknowledge together. And certainly from my experience, having supported individuals through all this, when you verbalize it, it loses some of its power. But also when you verbalize it with someone else and realize that you're not alone, that you're not cracking up, that everybody else is feeling it, to a certain extent. And then it sort of lets it go a bit. It just makes it less powerful, because we acknowledge this is a really rough time we've been having. Don't underestimate it.
I think that it does not just end now that we've had our vaccination or the numbers are going down, because I think that one of the things that I want to home in is the trauma is there. So COVID-19 may be gone, the pandemic, the economy may be improving a little bit, and the chaos is not as much as, but it's left a lasting effect. There's a lasting impact. So all those wonderful groups that set up and was helping to make sure that Joe Blocks down the road got the food, got their medication, all of that. Again, I think that there's something else that the world needs now. There's something else. Yes, they may not need food now. They may not need their prescription now, but we need to recognize that we have experienced some trauma. And there are a group of people that I believe, as you said, those that have been on the hamster wheel all throughout this pandemic, they need looking after. So I just want to say that can we then probably look out for different groups, keep the groups going, keep the conversations going, keep up the support going. Only that maybe the support might have to take a different shape now, but we should recognize that the fact that COVID-19 figures have gone down does not mean the trauma has gone. There are lasting trauma and there's lasting impact that we should continue to support one another. How would you say that leaders should show up in this season?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we have to be careful with the language we use as well. I think, using words like trauma, I think sometimes can make it more traumatic, if that makes sense. So I think we have to acknowledge, yes, it's been a challenging time, but I think the words we use can be really powerful, because I think it's so easy to get into that victim mode of poor me, opposed to being much more responsible and saying, what can I learn from this? And I think this is where we have to watch each other and notice if we start getting into that victim mode. That doesn't underestimate the power of what we've been through, or the challenges that we faced, but it's noticing that we are in control of how we behave. We are in control of how we react to it. And we have all those skills within us, because otherwise it's so easy to say, oh, poor me, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, this wouldn't have happened. Now, as I say, I'm not underestimating the power of it at all.
Okay.
The way we think about it, the way that we address it, it could be the absolute making of us if we want it to be, because we have a choice, and that's the difference.
In every situation we do, we have a choice.
And I think it's noticing that we do have a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't feel we have a choice.
Yeah.
And then it's actually reflecting and think, actually, what choice do I have? And which choice am I going to make? Because by definition, that already makes us feel much more empowered and in control.
Yeah. Dr. Lizzy, I know we're coming to an end, but there's something else that you do. And I want us to, you said you help leaders to rediscover their voice. How can I rediscover my voice? How can I develop my confidence? How can I show up correctly? So I think I just want us to end with that. How can someone rediscover? Because again, it's two things here. Either you never knew that you had a voice, or there's some group of people that had a voice, but due to one reason or the other, they lost that voice, and you help them to rediscover. So can we conclude on that topic?
So I guess, there are some individuals that can just suddenly notice and think, right, I'm just going to sort this out and say something. Yeah. Sometimes it just takes those conversations to give you the confidence to just, and also reflection is really important. So it's sometimes it's having those conversations to think, right, okay, this happened. Yeah. What was really going on there? And then you think, oh God, it's that trigger again. And I talk about, our big wise owl, that's our best authentic self, and those little chipmunks or whatever that tell us we're rubbish, tell us are useless. Mm. And so it's acknowledging that that little nipping at us, telling us we're not good enough, that is just those naughty characters out to get us that are not real. They're just our childhood self telling us to protect us from something scary. So once we start acknowledging that, but I totally acknowledge that sometimes it needs somebody else to give us some guidance, but it's just practicing. So, it's starting small. So, for example, you haven't got to stand in front of a big stage and say the world I believe or whatever. Yeah. It could be that you notice in a restaurant that your food's cold. So give it a go and just say to the waitress, sorry, my food's cold. Could you go and heat it up again? So it's starting really small. Or, if you get service, it's not good enough somewhere. Yeah. Just say, actually, no, I'm not giving you a tip because you took 2 hours before you gave me my main course, or whatever it is.
I think that I'm just listening to you, and these days I'm having to push myself. I'm not great with conflict management.
Yeah, none of us are.
And I'm also not great with confronting people. Even though when I know point blank that the thing that they've done is not the right thing. Yeah. And I know how that behavior has made me feel, but I always put other people's ahead of myself. I always consider other people's emotions above mine. And even though they've hurt me, I'm terrified about how I'm going to make them feel. Yeah. And I think what you were just saying there, that brushing things under the carpet, you continue to put more on yourself. You continue to hide yourself because it made you feel bad, but your inability to deal with that problem makes matters worse for you. And I think inevitably you're making matters worse for the other person because you're empowering the other person to continue with their bad behavior. Yeah. So whereas you call them out in the nicest way. There are ways to calling people out. I'm not saying that we should troll people and be very nasty and horrible to people. Yeah. And so there's a way that you can speak to people. But I think it's all helps you become your better person too.
Yeah. So for example, talking about going out to eat or something, you can say politely, actually, could you heat this up a bit? It's a bit cold. And no one can take offense if you say it politely. Yeah. And if you always use the I rather than you, I feel this. No one can argue with that. If you say you've done this and you've done that, that's really defensive. Yeah. But if you talk about your feelings, I'd like this a bit warmer, please, thank you very much, or whatever it is. Yeah. And it is starting, the biggest change is starting be aware.
Yeah.
And then once you have the awareness, then you can start developing a choice.
So who are your client group, Dr. Lizzy? Who do you support? Who do you help?
Yes, so I support leaders who are frustrated that they can't speak up at meetings, or and often it's those that come to me who either are frustrated because they feel they're just not got the promotion they wanted, or it's when they're frustrated because other people keep telling them they're amazing and they don't believe it themselves.
Yeah. So how can people contact you? How can people kind of link in with your services, or if somebody needed some support, how do they, apart from, are you happy for me to give out your email address and your LinkedIn? Yes.
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. I've got my website. My business is Release Your Potential. So RY Potential is my website.
Yeah,
LinkedIn
I'll be displaying that as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way. It's a great format. Yeah, so delighted to have I always give, a free conversation just to see how you are.
Yes.
I do at least.
I've had mine.
Yeah. we always have. I always give at least one free workshop a month, just because I want to add value.
Yes.
And go from there.
Yeah. So what one word do you want to leave our audience with? What one? Not even one, but what few words do you want to leave somebody with today? Because I just did a previous recording today, and the lady said something very profound, and I loved it. It's a simple thing that she said, but I really love. She says that you never know the one word that you say that somebody picks up on, and that defines their whole day.
Yeah.
You never know the smile, just sometimes just that one smile that you smile towards somebody, that is all they needed for that moment. That is also, what one word or few words do you want to leave with somebody that's listening to us? Because I really want people to stand up. I really want people to sit up. I really want people, I'm not a business coach, so I'm not going to try and take your line or but for me, I'm just trying to bring together people and say, look, you can do better. You can be better. You can be fantastic. You can be wonderful. These are the tools. Here are the people really willing to help and can help you to become that person. So what do you want to say to somebody that's listening?
You have it all already. You are awesome. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing's broken. You have it all.
Amazing. Dr. Lizzy, thank you so much for spending your time with us, your afternoon with us today. And I want to thank everybody that's listened to this conversation. Leave a comment in the comment section. Please share this with everyone, because I believe that this particular conversation is really needed for the times and the seasons that we are on. But it's a conversation for a group of us, for many of us. So share this conversation with as many people as you need to share it with. And I also want to encourage you to hit the subscription button and notification button, so that whenever we upload any more videos, you will be the first to know. And just to let you know, I've got another amazing guest coming into the studio next week, and we will have another leadership conversation. Thank you so much, and thank you for being a part of this. Dr. Lizzy, thank you ever so much.
It's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.